The Prime Minister will make a pre-election commitment on childcare today. It'll mean that parents would no longer be required to work or study to access subsidised childcare. Georgie Dent is the CEO of The Parenthood and she joins me in the studio now. Georgie, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
So Labor is looking at partially scrapping the activity test. Can you just explain to us what the activity test is and what does it mean?
Yeah, so look, the activity test is basically, it's what determines a family's eligibility to access subsidised early childhood education and care. So currently, families have to be meeting a minimum requirement of either work or study to be able to access early education and care. Now, this was designed and intended as a workforce incentive so that parents would return to the workforce. In reality, what the activity test has done is locked out as many as 126,000 children from participating in early childhood education and care, and has disproportionately impacted children from lower income households, First Nations families, children with any form of disadvantage. And the reason for that is, while it might sound simple that if you want to access subsidised childcare you have to have a job or be studying or have some form of approved activity, the cruel reality is if you don't have a job, then you cannot pay for childcare. But if you don't have childcare lined up, you cannot accept a shift or a job. And so it actually has locked out children who would benefit the most from participating and has made participating in the workforce really hard for a lot of households, particularly single parent households.
There have been calls for this to be scrapped for quite some time now. So what do you think, what sort of an impact do you think this would have on families across the country if this does go ahead?
This would be an incredible measure for equity in this country, but also for the potential and future of children and families. So we know that when children have access to high quality early education and care, they are far more likely to arrive at school ready to learn. At the moment, 1 in 5 children are arriving at school developmentally vulnerable. When those children arrive behind, it's really difficult for them to catch up. So we have got redesigning and reframing this so that we accept that every child is entitled to participate in high quality early education and care is profound.
So you're making a distinction there between childcare and early childhood education. What is the difference and why is it important that that distinction's made?
Look, the correct terminology is early childhood education and care, because what happens in those early years is absolutely education. And that's actually part of why this paradigm shift of what the Prime Minister has announced that they would do, it really is recognising that early childhood education and care is part of our education system. And what the Prime Minister has said is, in the same way that we don't turn children away from the local primary school, depending on what their parents earn or don't earn or how and when they work, we recognise that children themselves are entitled to participate in our education system. We need to have that same lens in the early years because 90% of brain development occurs between the ages of 0 and 5. So recognising how profound and positive high quality early childhood education and care is for the development, education and well-being of children is fundamental. And that is a shift that advocates like myself at The Parenthood, but so many other advocates around this country have been calling for decades, to recognise how crucial early childhood education and care is.
We haven't yet heard sort of an official formal response from the opposition yet, but we did hear comments on radio this morning that they believe that childcare places should be prioritised for working families. Given how competitive childcare places are to begin with and how difficult it is to get children into early education, why shouldn't that be the case, that it is prioritised for working parents?
We need to be doing a couple of things at once here. So at the moment, 24% of Australians live in what's described as a childcare desert, so where there are 3 or more children for every available place. We need to fix that. It's just not acceptable that we have a system where a quarter of families are not able to access what is actually critical infrastructure. It is infrastructure for the education and wellbeing of children, but it's also infrastructure that enables parents to be able to go to work, which overwhelmingly parents need 2 incomes just to meet the cost of living. So when families don't have access to that essential infrastructure, the detrimental impact on household budgets, as well as children, as well as communities, is really significant. So we are hoping that there will be some form of announcement around what can be done to ensure that communities and suburbs that are currently going without provision of early education and care have that. Part of the picture is needing a well-paid, properly supported workforce. The 15% wage increase that has been introduced and is beginning to trickle in is hugely significant in this regard, because we know that early childhood educators have been some of the lowest paid workers in Australia, despite their qualifications, despite how demanding and valuable their work is. Fixing that problem through improved pay, but also through improved professional support and recognition that their role is critical to the education and development of children, is again part of this picture where we need to start looking at ensuring, in the same way we do for primary school, we would not accept communities going without schools. We should not accept the same for early childhood education and care. And my sincere hope would be that all of the major parties, all of the candidates at the next election would be looking at commitments like this, thinking this is critical infrastructure that every Australian deserves. And it should not be the case that we accept that 126,000 children from low-income, disadvantaged backgrounds should be locked out of life-changing, quality, inclusive early childhood education and care.